In today's video, we're breaking down the most shocking cases of Karens that died in stupid ways. We go from a road-raging Karen who thought a scalding latte would settle a highway dispute, to a stubborn HOA board member whose demonstration at a high-voltage fence ended in a sudden, irreversible collapse that took only seconds. It was July 17th, 2016. The northbound merge lane of Interstate 35 outside Round Rock, Texas, moved steadily under late afternoon heat. Traffic flowed at 65 to 70 miles per hour, with vehicles compressing and separating as drivers adjusted to merging lanes, blind spots, and shifting gaps in heavy summer congestion. Brenda Malloy, 48, drove a leased luxury SUV provided by her employer. She worked as a regional sales director for a medical supply company, managing contracts across Central Texas. Her job required firm negotiation and tight deadlines. Co-workers described her as efficient but quick to escalate complaints, often posting negative reviews to apply pressure. That afternoon, she left a drive-thru irritated that her latte was not hot enough. She demanded it be remade extra hot and watched the employee fill the cup nearly to the rim. The plastic lid pressed down unevenly along one side, but she drove off without checking it again. Northbound traffic tightened as vehicles merged from an entrance ramp. A gray sedan entered ahead of her and moved into the right lane with a turn signal. Brenda braked sharply, then accelerated to close the distance. Witness statements later described her riding the sedan's rear bumper and repeatedly sounding her horn. She kept shaking her head and pointing forward as if correcting the other driver's behavior. When the sedan held its lane and speed, she jerked the wheel and moved into the left lane to draw even with it. Traffic continued at around 68 miles per hour. Brenda paced the sedan, turning her head fully toward the driver and shouting across the lanes. She lowered her window halfway and leaned toward the opening. With the coffee cup in her right hand and her left hand tight on the steering wheel, she kept yelling, extending her arm toward the open air as cars moved past on both sides. She then snapped her arm outward and flung the cup. At highway speed, the airflow redirected the liquid instantly. Instead of reaching the sedan, the coffee blew straight back through her own window. A sheet of near-boiling liquid and the loosened plastic lid struck her face and upper chest. Her eyes clamped shut on reflex. Her right hand recoiled, and the cup hit the interior door panel before dropping into the footwell. The SUV began drifting left as steering pressure changed. A semi-truck hauling a box trailer occupied the adjacent lane. The SUV's front quarter panel made contact with the truck's rear tandem wheels. The impact forced the SUV sideways. Its momentum carried it toward the trailer's right side at an angle. The trailer was equipped with a federally required rear underride guard, but this collision occurred along the trailer's side, where side underride protection was limited. The upper edge of the SUV's cabin struck the underside of the trailer at windshield height. The roof structure collapsed backward under the force. The driver's side door frame compressed inward. Traffic camera footage and the rear dash cam confirmed the sequence unfolded in under 4 seconds. Emergency services were contacted immediately. The semi-truck driver slowed and pulled onto the shoulder. First responders from Williamson County arrived in approximately 9 minutes. They found the SUV wedged beneath the trailer's side. Fire crews stabilized the trailer and used hydraulic tools to access the driver compartment. Brenda showed no signs of life at the scene. The medical examiner documented extensive blunt force trauma to the head, neck, and upper chest. The impact fractured the cervical spine and caused severe brain injury. Death was attributed to injuries sustained in a motor vehicle collision. Superficial burns were present on her face and collarbone, but were not fatal. Police classified the crash as a road rage-related loss of vehicle control. No charges were filed against the truck driver. The dashcam video was later included in the investigative record, but not every fatal escalation happens at highway speed. Some unfold in crowded public spaces where inches matter more than miles per hour. It was March 9th, 2015. The elevated commuter rail platform in Brockton, Massachusetts appeared routine, but a stalled train and packed passengers had narrowed the safe space to inches. Maintenance crews worked near the edge, while overhead announcements repeated instructions that many ignored. Amid the delay stood Denise Harper, 54. She had worked 26 years as a municipal payroll clerk for the city of Brockton, processing checks for public works crews, clerks, and school staff. Her job required accuracy and strict adherence to timelines. Co-workers described her as organized but easily irritated by disruptions. She frequently reminded others that her taxes funded public services and believed that entitled her to priority treatment when systems slowed down. That evening, as the train sat stalled, she grew visibly agitated. She paced near the yellow strip, complaining loudly about wasted time and mismanaged service. She pointed at the maintenance worker near the platform edge and demanded that the train move immediately, insisting the delay was unacceptable. The older Brockton platform, concrete surface, steel railings, and a narrow gap between train and edge became the focus of her frustration. Beneath removable steel plates were couplers and brake linkages that shifted slightly when trains restarted, tightening slack and moving cars forward by inches. The inbound train had paused for several minutes because of uneven brake pressure. A maintenance worker opened a small access panel near the platform edge to adjust a misaligned gap plate. Orange cones marked the inspection area, and repeated announcements instructed passengers to remain behind the yellow tactile strip until service resumed. Crowding intensified as another train waited behind. Denise moved closer to the platform edge, stating that the area was public space and that the worker should finish quickly. The technician directed her to step back while adjusting the plate. Instead, she stepped forward and placed one foot onto a temporary steel cover that had been laid over the open recess. Security review later confirmed the cover was not bolted down. It was intended to rest flat only while the train remained stationary. Denise shifted her weight onto it while angling her body toward the nearest door, positioning herself to board first once movement resumed. Air pressure returned to the brake system. When the engineer released the brakes, the cars rolled forward slightly to remove slack between couplers. That routine movement caused the gap plate assembly to shift. The loose cover beneath Denise's foot slid and tilted into the opening. Her right leg dropped suddenly into the narrow space between the platform and the train car. The train advanced only a short distance but carried significant mass. She lost balance and fell forward, her upper body striking the concrete platform edge as the steel side of the car pressed into her lower body. Nearby passengers pulled back as the movement occurred. A transit employee activated the emergency brake immediately. The train stopped within seconds, but the clearance between the car and platform remained limited. Her pelvis and abdomen were compressed between the platform edge and the rigid steel underframe of the car. Emergency services were contacted immediately. Fire and EMS units arrived within minutes, but access required stabilizing the car and creating space with hydraulic lifting tools. When responders reached her, she had no detectable breathing or pulse. The medical examiner determined the cause of death was massive blunt and compressive trauma to the pelvis and abdomen. In plain terms, the crushing force ruptured major blood vessels and damaged internal organs, leading to rapid internal bleeding. The report stated death would have occurred within minutes due to blood loss and traumatic shock. Investigators found no mechanical defect. Data logs showed the slight forward movement was part of normal brake reset procedures. The unsecured temporary cover and her position at the platform edge led to the fall. The death was ruled accidental, and transit officials reinforced safety boundaries during maintenance before reopening the platform the next morning. Elsewhere, in a place built for entertainment rather than transportation, another dispute over control would rise far above ground level. It was August 14, 2017. The late afternoon heat hung over a regional amusement park outside Springfield, Missouri. The Sky Flyer Tower rotated steadily above the midway, chairs tracing wide circles against a pale sky. From the ground, it looked controlled and ordinary. By sunset, one empty swing would still be turning slowly. Earlier that day, Deanna Price, 53, arrived at the park with two colleagues from the apartment complexes she managed. She had spent nearly 20 years in property management, handling lease disputes, maintenance complaints, and tenant conflicts. The role required firm rule enforcement, and she often approached disagreements as matters of authority. Friends described her as highly conscious of appearance and status. She documented issues carefully and rarely backed down, especially when others were watching. That afternoon, she joined the line for the Skyflyer swing ride, a rotating tower attraction that lifted riders high above the park before spinning them in wide circles. As the line crawled forward, she began complaining loudly about delays and staff efficiency. When assigned to share a double-width swing chair with a teenage boy in a stained work shirt, she refused outright. She insisted on riding alone and argued with the operator about seating assignments, drawing attention from nearby guests. After verifying her weight met the single-rider allowance for the two-person chair, staff permitted her request. The lap bar was lowered and the seatbelt fastened. But witnesses later said she continued speaking sharply to the operator and gesturing downward as the ride began its ascent. It was about 88 degrees with a light breeze under 10 miles per hour, and the ride had cleared its routine inspection earlier that morning with no reported mechanical issues. As the swings lifted, Deanna adjusted a large handbag on her lap. Surveillance video shows her leaning forward before the ride reached full rotation. As speed increased, centrifugal force pushed the chairs outward. Readers were pressed back into their seats by the outward pull. Witnesses below observed her repeatedly reaching toward her waist area. At peak rotation, chairs extended at roughly a 35 to 40 degree angle from vertical. The outward force pressed riders firmly against the lap bar. Video later reviewed by park officials showed Deanna unclipping her secondary seatbelt while the ride was in motion. She appeared to reposition her bag and retrieve her phone. With the belt disengaged, only the lap bar remained as restraint. Seconds later, her body shifted forward. She leaned down and slightly to her left. The outward force kept the lap bar tight against her upper thighs, but her hips slid forward as her torso moved beyond the bar's centerline. The lap bar was not designed to restrain a rider who leaned forward beneath it. A nearby rider later stated he saw her legs extend downward unexpectedly. She slipped completely from the seat at an estimated height between 80 and 90 feet. The fall was captured on park CCTV from two angles. She struck a landscaped mulch area near a perimeter fence. The impact was head first, followed by her upper body collapsing onto the ground. The ride operator initiated an emergency stop, and emergency services were contacted immediately. Paramedics arrived within minutes. Deanna was unresponsive with severe head trauma and compromised breathing. Advanced life support was initiated on site before transport. She was pronounced dead shortly after arrival at a nearby hospital. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death as multiple blunt force injuries from a high-elevation fall. The autopsy found severe skull fractures, traumatic brain injury, broken ribs, and internal bleeding, consistent with a head-first impact from significant height. Toxicology tests were negative for alcohol and drugs. Park investigators reviewed maintenance logs and surveillance footage. All mechanical systems functioned properly, and the lap bar showed no defect. Video confirmed the seatbelt was unlatched during operation. In the following weeks, the park implemented enhanced restraint checks and installed larger warning signs stating that removing restraints mid-ride can result in death. Clear instructions and mechanical safeguards had been in place, but they only worked if someone chose to use them. In another crowded setting, a different kind of equipment sat ready with its own built-in protections, also ignored. If these stories show how fast entitlement can turn fatal, consider subscribing for more. There are many more moments where one impulsive decision changed everything. It was November 22, 2018. Late afternoon at a commercial gym in Tampa, Florida, the weight floor was packed for the holiday rush. Music played, plates clanged, and phones recorded short clips. Within minutes, a routine lift would end with paramedics working beside a bench and a crowd pressed silent against mirrored walls. Sheila Moreno, 45, had already posted twice to her fitness page that day. She worked part-time as a dental office receptionist, but spent most of her time building an online following around heavy lifting and strict discipline. She often described herself as self-taught and rejected what she called unnecessary interference. Trainers at the gym knew her as consistent but argumentative, especially when corrected. She had previously pushed back when staff suggested lowering weight, using a spotter, or adjusting equipment, insisting she knew her limits better than anyone else. That evening, she claimed the Smith machine during peak hours and began setting up for another filmed lift. The Smith machine guided a bar straight up and down on steel rails and included adjustable safety pegs designed to catch the bar if a repetition failed. Witnesses saw her load multiple 45-pound plates on each side for a heavy set meant for video content. When a floor trainer pointed to the safety pegs and advised raising them closer to shoulder height, she responded sharply and waved him off, making it clear she did not want instruction. She left the pegs near their lowest setting, wiped the bar quickly. Placed a flat bench underneath, and positioned herself for a behind-the-neck press without engaging the safeguards meant to prevent the bar from dropping onto her neck. The behind-the-neck press starts with the bar lowered behind the head, close to the upper spine, making it less stable than a standard overhead press and dependent on controlled grip and shoulder balance. Sheila had performed it before with lighter weight. This time, she added more plates than usual. She sat upright with her feet planted and her back against the bench, her phone mounted on a small tripod in front of her. The first repetition moved up steadily. On the second, the bar cleared the back of her head and reached near full extension. Sweat had built along her palms and across the knurled grip. As she lowered it for the third repetition, her right hand shifted slightly outward and the bar tilted. With the safety peg set too low to catch it at neck height, nothing interrupted its downward path. The bar struck the base of her neck and upper back with the full loaded weight. The impact forced her chin forward and drove her torso down against the bench. Witnesses nearby heard a sharp metallic crack followed by plates rattling against the rails. Her arms dropped immediately. The bar pressed her neck between steel and the bench edge, bending her forward at an unnatural angle. People nearby reacted within seconds, lifting the bar along the rails and moving the bench away. She remained motionless and not breathing. Emergency services were called immediately, and staff began CPR while an automated external defibrillator was applied. Paramedics arrived within minutes and continued advanced life support before transporting her to a nearby hospital. Hospital records and the autopsy determined that the bar fractured her cervical vertebrae in the upper spine. The break severely damaged the spinal cord. In simple terms, the injury interrupted the signals that control breathing and heartbeat. There were no signs of equipment failure. The cause of death was listed as cervical spine fracture with spinal cord injury due to accidental weightlifting trauma. The gym provided CCTV footage to investigators and reviewed its floor supervision policies. Management later required trainers to confirm safety stop placement before heavy lifts and posted clearer signage about assisted training and spotters. Her final recording remained on her phone. It was reviewed during the investigation and later incorporated into internal safety briefings as an example of how quickly a controlled lift can become fatal when safeguards are improperly set. Outside a suburban utility yard, another demonstration meant to prove a point would end the same way when a safeguard was treated as optional. It was May 3rd, 2014. In a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Marietta, Georgia, a fenced power substation stood behind new steel posts and clearly marked high-voltage warning signs. The recent security upgrade had drawn complaints for weeks. By late afternoon, damp grass still held rainwater from the night before, and several neighbors gathered along the perimeter sidewalk. At the center of the dispute was Cheryl Denton, 52. She had served 3 years on the Homeowners Association board and built her reputation on strict property standards and protecting resale values. Before retirement, she worked as an insurance claims adjuster, reviewing damage reports and disputing payouts. She relied heavily on documentation and formal complaints. Neighbors described her as persistent and confrontational during disputes, often escalating minor issues into formal challenges with local agencies. The fence she opposed was a commercial pulsed electric security fence rated for perimeter protection, similar to systems used at utility sites. It was not a steady current. Instead, it released brief, high-voltage pulses at set intervals, each lasting only fractions of a second, designed to discourage climbing or tampering. Under normal dry conditions, contact would cause intense pain and involuntary muscle contraction, but typically not sustained injury. The system depended on grounding. Electricity required a path through a body to the earth to complete a circuit. The fence displayed multiple danger high-voltage placards spaced every few feet along the wire. That afternoon, Cheryl attended a small gathering near the sidewalk bordering the facility. She had previously emailed and mailed formal complaints to the utility company, demanding the removal of what she called an excessive measure. Heavy rain the previous night left the soil saturated, and shallow puddles remained along the fence line. The grass near the posts was visibly wet and flattened in places from foot traffic. She arrived carrying a standard metal bucket filled with tap water. Her stated purpose was to show that the fence would not cause harm. Several neighbors stood nearby, and a general phone recording occurred, though no clear video captured the exact electrical contact itself. The fence was active. Later inspection confirmed the energizer was functioning normally and had not been shut down. Cheryl removed her sandals and stepped directly onto the wet grass within a few feet of the lowest energized strand. She held the metal handle of the bucket with both hands. The ground beneath her bare feet was dark with moisture. She lifted the bucket and threw water toward the wire at about chest height. The water arced toward the wire as it left the bucket. Investigators later believed the wet stream and saturated ground likely created a conductive path during the next pulse, allowing current to pass through the metal handle, across her body, and into the soil. Her body stiffened immediately. Her shoulders drew upward and her back arched as muscles contracted involuntarily. The bucket dropped from her hands. She fell backward onto the wet grass and did not attempt to rise. The pulse ended almost instantly, but she remained motionless. Emergency services were called immediately. Paramedics arrived within minutes and began resuscitation efforts, including chest compressions and cardiac monitoring. Despite intervention, no sustained heart rhythm returned. Utility monitoring equipment recorded a brief ground fault at approximately the same time. Investigators later confirmed the fence system operated within manufacturer specifications and showed no malfunction. There was no evidence of prolonged entanglement or extended exposure to current. The county medical examiner determined the cause of death was cardiac arrhythmia triggered by electrical shock. In simple terms, the pulse disrupted the heart's electrical rhythm, causing it to stop beating effectively. Examination found small surface burns on her hands and the soles of her feet consistent with an electrical pathway, but no deep internal burning. The HOA board halted its formal objections to the fence. The utility company later held a public safety meeting explaining grounding, wet surface conductivity, and how pulsed perimeter systems function. Neighbor recordings were provided to investigators and reviewed as part of the final report. Thank you for watching. If you're ready to see more Last Moments videos, click right here.